Hello and welcome to Pedagogical Dialogues. My name is Benjamin Stewart at benjaminlstewart.net. Pedagogical Dialogues is a podcast making teaching and learning more transparent. A place to share thoughts and opinions about what's happening in the English language learning classroom. A space to share perspectives and gain understandings around problems that teachers and students face in formal education. Before we get into today's episode, if you have any thoughts or experiences on today's topic, feel free to reach out to me at my Twitter handle at BNLEEZ or any of my other socials accessible at benjaminlstewart.net. Hello and welcome to episode 129, The English Language Instructor Finding Flow. Today I want to share with you a recent talk I gave at the MEX-TESOL Regional Conference here in Aguascalientes on March 5th, 2022. I talk about some of my process and how I go about organizing my time, managing my time in terms of classes that I teach, and also ways that I go about linking information that I have and sharing that publicly. So without further ado, here is a recording of that talk.
Hi everyone, welcome to the presentation The English Language Instructor Finding Flow by Benjamin L. Stewart. Benjamin L. Stewart is a full professor in ESL teacher training at the Universidad Autónoma de Aguascalientes with an interest in transparent professional and network learning. He holds a PhD in education with a specialization in instructional and curriculum leadership and a master's degree in education. Curriculum Instructor, Technology.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you guys had a nice lunch. It's always great to have these local conferences, especially having a chance to see a lot of you that I have had in class. It's great to see you now in the profession doing great things. It's great to see some colleagues I haven't seen in a while. Of course, students that I currently am teaching now. It's great to have you here as well. And of course, meeting new people. It's really nice to be here. I really appreciate the invitation to give this talk for today. Before I start, I would like to share, if you do the Twitter thing, you can reach me at Twitter at my Twitter handle at BNLEEZ if you have any questions about what we talk about. I'm always interested in connecting with other teachers. If you like sharing your experiences, feel free to reach out to me via my Twitter. And this presentation that we'll look at here today is available if you would like, as well as all the references to what we talk about with this URL. You should be able to access this same presentation. Before I get into the topic of finding flow, right, I am specifically thinking of English language educators and also in pre-service, those who are studying to be English language teachers. But our focus today is going to be thinking about flow, finding flow. And I'm using these words, finding flow, deliberately to mean that it's not like, oh, I found it, I have it, I'm good, right, I'm done. It's a process, right? This presentation I've been working on here, this conference was originally scheduled for January. And this presentation, as it sits right now, is quite different than what it would have been last January, because my process, my flow, continues to change. So keep that in mind as we're going through some of the concepts here today and some of the opportunities we'll have today to kind of reflect on our own flow. And also keep in mind that what I share, my experiences with flow, will probably be different than your own process, right? And what I hope to do today is to give you some principles, a framework, some theory, but also some concrete examples of how you can take some of these ideas here and adapt it to your own. Now, before we continue, I'd like to ask a question. It's always good to start with questions, right? How many decisions, those of you who are teaching in the English language classroom, how many decisions do you think, educational decisions, do you think you make per day? If you ever had to really kind of think about it and say, okay, geez, I have 3, 4 classes, I don't know, however many classes, however many students you have, the planning stages, the implementation stages, the assessment. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Anybody want to guess how many decisions that you might make a day? Any ideas?
Well, 50.
50. Anybody else? Lower? Higher? Anyone thinking 50?
Higher.
Right, so it's kind of hard to think throughout your day, right? How many decisions? Because it's an ongoing thing, right? It's in the moment. Next slide, please. Teachers make more minute-by-minute decisions than brain surgeons. So you should feel pretty good about that. And that is why you're going home so exhausted at the end of the day. Do you feel sometimes you get home and you're just fried? I know I do. I get home, I've got kids, so I'm trying to attend to them and my wife and all the other, my dogs, and my mind is exploded. It's fried. It's because we're making so many decisions. We make over. Somebody actually count. I don't know how they counted, but I'm just the messenger. But somebody's actually counting over 1,500 educational decisions per day. That's over 4 per minute. If you want to get down to the nitty gritty. Wow. I mean that's exhausting just to think about it. Because we don't probably think about it, because it's just an ongoing thing. In the moment, we're deciding every minute in class, for example. So today I want to give you some ideas about flow to kind of help accommodate, to think, okay, yeah, I make a lot of decisions, but I hope today I can influence some of your decision making for you to deal with your own flow, to understand your flow, to understand how you can be more effective, efficient, and engaging with your students. Next slide, please. So Csikszentmihalyi came up with this graphic, and I think it's a good way to really look at flow. Thinking in one column here, in one aspect, challenges, right? We know we have a lot of challenges, especially the last couple of years, but we also have our own skills. Okay, and so today I want to think about these two aspects, challenges and skills. And when I think about skills, I'm going to take some liberty here and expand this idea of skills to also include knowledge, right? What you know, skills, what you can do. Very important, your disposition, your attitudes, right? Has a huge influence on what you do and what you know. In terms of getting things done, we're going to use this term, getting things done, because this actually comes from a book from David Allen. So a lot of the concepts that we talk about here today are related to getting things done, because that's what we do when we're in flow. We get stuff done. So we're going to be looking at that. I first want to look, though, at some challenges. Now, keep in mind, some challenges are within our control. Some challenges are not within our control. So I think it's important to put that into perspective, to not feel sometimes overwhelmed with some of the challenges we face, because we all face a lot of challenges. Forget COVID, just a normal situation. There's tons of challenges that we face. So try to keep that in mind. Try to keep that perspective, thinking of what you can control and what is beyond your control. But let's take a look at a couple of challenges. And I don't need to show you the evidence in the theory about the challenges of COVID. We face it every single day. But just for the purposes of this talk, we do have some stats. 1.5 billion, that's with a B, students are suffering. They're having problems academically. They're suffering from emotional situations. Their emotional health is at jeopardy. We now have this term like language loss. Some countries are being categorized by language loss. Like I think I heard Mexico, the language loss figure was like 18 months. Like students are behind 18 months. In every country, has this figure, this language loss, right? So this is something that comes in. This is a challenge that is on us in some way, depending on where we work, but certainly that this is a reality, right? Another challenge, heavy emotional demands on the part of teachers. I don't need to show you this. You know this. But if it gives you any peace of mind, like the evidence supports that, a lot of other people are going through a lot of stuff, to put it nicely, right? And so here we have our challenges. Some things we can control, some challenges we can't. In Mexico specifically, right, from the year 2019 to 2020, 10% of kids did not go back to school for the 2021 year. Again, it's a challenge. We see this in different ways, but this is our reality. 33% of kids, students, between the ages of 16 and 18, they're out of school. They haven't completed a high school degree yet. And so imagine schools are trying to get these kids back in, and adults. We're facing our own challenges, and this is our context. This is our situation currently. Now, finding flow addresses to put some of those perspectives of those challenges that we're facing to try to understand flow. And the first question I think is important to ask is why? Why flow? Well, understanding one's flow leads to optimal experiences. And this is what I want from each of you, is to find your path to reach an optimal experience. What is optimal for me, obviously, is not going to be optimal for you, but the idea is to be able to find these ways of working and learning and teaching and sharing in a way that is optimal for you. Right? So here, when times, optimal times when one feels in control. So you feel in control. You feel in control of the situation. Even though you got challenges all around you, you got it under control. Sense of exhilaration, a deep sense of enjoyment. Okay, it's a deep sense of enjoyment. When you're in flow, you are in a place or in a space that is enjoyable. Even though there's stuff falling around you, that's the why. What is flow? Flow is what we feel when we feel alive. Flow involves what we do and is in harmony with the environment around us. Flow is something that happens easily when we sing, dance, or sports. How many of you like to sing? Can you consider yourself a singer? Don't be shy. It's okay. I'm not going to ask anybody to sing. Don't worry, I won't ask anybody to sing. How many of you play an instrument? A musical instrument? Okay. How many of you like to dance? I don't know. I like to dance, but I'm a horrible. But I like it. I like it. I'm not sure if I ever find flow, but I do like to dance. Okay. Sports, anybody likes sports? Okay. These are the common aspects where we find ourselves in flow because time doesn't exist. Maybe you've been in that situation where you're performing, maybe you're singing at a concert. You could be out there for 2 or 3 hours and time just flies. Right? But flow could also occur when you're at work, believe it or not. Okay? It can and it can occur when you're reading a good book or having a good conversation. Think of a class that you felt went really well. I bet you were in flow. The time you look down your watch and the class is over, and the class just clicked. Students were responding. You're in the moment. Everything's just you strive for those moments, right? For me as a teacher, I'm striving for that every single day. Sometimes I succeed, maybe sometimes I don't succeed. But you're striving for that flow. Next slide. So, today I want to talk about flow for teachers, English language teachers, and I'm thinking very specifically about moving from notes. I'm going to be talking about different kinds of notes and how to take notes, okay? And it all leads to, all of our discussions today in this column here under notes, leads to some outcome. Now, some of the outcomes that came to mind, lesson plans, a learning management system, now that most of us are online or have been at some point online, Probably we have a Moodle, we have, I don't know, Canvas, Blackboard, some Google Classroom, some kind of online management system that we have to send information to, that we have to publish, if you will, if we have to send information to these spaces. Sometimes we might be publishing articles, depending if you like to publish. Maybe you're doing action research, doing research on what you do every single day with your students, and you're publishing maybe books, articles, maybe websites. Maybe some of you have your own teacher website, magazines, open courseware, podcasting, blogging, etc. Maybe you would need to publish some notes in terms of a teacher's meeting. You have a staff meeting, and you need information here for that purpose. Maybe the notes that you have and that you're developing are just to have very informal pedagogical discussions. That is, just a chat with a colleague, right? The water cooler conversations, so to speak. So those informal conversations you have, you go into maybe your colleague's office and you just talk. You talk about different things. You talk about your practice and what went well and what doesn't. And curricular events, I mean, the list goes on. Okay, these are just some things that come to mind in our field as English language teachers. Okay, today I want to look at 3 different aspects of finding flow. The first, planning model, how the brain works. I want to also then talk about status flow, and I'm naming these as status flow and residential flow. All of these 3 combined, are in the form of this process of taking notes. And this is what we're going to get into in a second. Here, so we've got these 3 aspects. Again, this is coming from the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. A lot of these concepts that we're defining. And when we talk about getting things done, we basically are looking at 2 aspects. Outcomes, right, and actions. There's really nothing else to it. Outcomes, what do we need to achieve? What's the product? And the actions, the actual behaviors that we need to do to achieve those. So, how does the brain work? Have you thought about your why recently? As a teacher, as a human being, what is your why? You know, Apple, thinking of Apple, the company, before they think about the iPhone, distribution channels, how they're going to market a certain product, they have already established the why they even exist. But now I ask you as an individual, as a teacher, English language teacher, what is your why? Anyone want to share what your why is, your purpose? Yes?
To provide to my students one wonderful tool that I feel is English language for their lives. That's
Okay. All right. So to supply them with a tool of language, right, so that they can do more with their own lives. Okay. Anybody else want to share? And it can be as broad or as narrow as you wish. What do you think? Your why? Because sometimes it's difficult. We think, what's my why? What's my purpose? I got to go to work. I have to teach 3 classes this semester. I got to make sure my grades are in, and that's all, part of it. But the purpose is more broad usually. It's a little bit more general.
Well, yes. My why is just to enjoy it.
Okay, and enjoy what aspects? What for you?
Enjoy the class, to enjoy the kids, to enjoy the moment.
All right, because the kids know, right? I mean, if they know, if you enjoy it, they enjoy it for sure. Right? If you're up there and you're like, oh, this is just another day. I'm trying to get through this class. This one class is a little not my favorite, and it's hard, and I show it on my face. Well, they're gonna see that, and they're gonna react in kind. Okay? Yeah.
It will also be like sharing experiences, sharing your knowledge, having or making your students be able to do something different in a different language, of course, making them capable of speaking a second language and stuff. But
Yeah.
well, what I think is that is sharing,
I think-
sharing and exchanging.
I think, yeah, that's really important, and I share that sentiment. Like share, and certainly we want to share with our students. This is why we're in the profession, where it's not like, oh, I have all this knowledge, I'm going to hang on to it, I don't want to share it with my students. We're out there trying to share as much as possible. But also sharing could extend beyond the classroom. Maybe it's to your colleagues. Maybe it's publishing something online so that you're offering other people outside of your school, for example, a chance to know something about you or your experiences. You're sharing even beyond your immediate people that you're in contact with. So yes, your why. Finding your why is very important. And sometimes I feel that at least I can speak for me, I don't spend enough time thinking here, what's my why? What really drives me to teach? And again, it could expand beyond the classroom. Then and this usually comes first, the brain starts here. If the brain doesn't get this, the why, everything else kind of, like, why am I doing this? I mean, maybe we've been in that situation. We're doing a project or we're doing something. We're like, okay, what's up? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? So we need to have a why. And then the what will I accomplish? Now we're getting into more of the specifics about what it is that we want to accomplish and how will you get there. This is usually at the end. These are the brainstorming sessions, the organization, the taking the actions that are necessary in order to complete those projects. So we want to start here, and the brain works to the right. This example we'll come back to. Okay, next slide. So getting things done, I'm going to talk about 4, 5 steps that I want for you to consider for establishing flow. Now, this could be flow for preparing for a class. It could be during the class, even reflecting and evaluating your own class. But this first step is very important. It's simply capture information. Now, I don't know how many times, and I don't know, I'm sure you've been in this situation. You're driving to school, and you've got that first class at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're thinking, okay, what you're planning. You're thinking about what you're going to do while you're driving. Maybe you're in the shower, and you're thinking, okay, today I got to do this, and this. But you're thinking. You're just doing other things. And you're reflecting on, okay, you're planning usually, okay? The idea with capturing is to have the ability to, in that moment, in that few moments, because it probably doesn't last that long, is to record that idea, to write it down so that maybe you don't forget it, right? It's possible you could be thinking of something on your way to work and maybe you forget it later on. The idea here is to find something. Maybe it's a notebook. You can go old school, pen, piece of paper, write it down. Not while you're driving. You have to be careful. But as soon as you pull up to a stoplight, write it down. Don't want any accidents. Maybe it's a computer. Maybe it's a cell phone, a tablet, something. Okay? But you got to capture those moments. Maybe you're on a website. You see something. That's good for my class for tomorrow. So you capture that. The idea here is when you're waiting to get your hair cut, you're at the grocery store waiting in line. You're at the dentist's office and you're waiting because he's behind. You're capturing that information at all times. The information is constantly coming in. And all it is capture. Okay? The next, all right, so in my case, here this is what I do. Now this is where I want you to see what I do and then say, okay, would this work for me or maybe it wouldn't work for me. I use technology and I specifically use an app called Evernote. Evernote is a free app. You can install it. I don't work for Evernote. I don't get a commission. But there is a free version for Evernote that you can use. And what's great about Evernote is it's a note-taking app, for one, and it's on pretty much every platform that we have. So if I'm on my phone at the grocery store, I'm using my Android. If I'm at work in my office, maybe I'm going through online websites. I've got my Windows, my Evernote on my Windows, or maybe my iPad, whichever. But whatever device, and it could be all just on one device. It depends on what works for you. The point is very simple. Get those ideas down. Your mind, what your mind does very well is it analyzes and synthesizes. You can think critically. That's what the brain does well. But what the brain doesn't do so well is store information. You are limited in how much you can actually store. So the idea with capture is simple. Get that idea down somehow, some way, whether it's technology, whether it's a piece of paper and a pen, so that you don't lose that idea. The next step is to clarify. And to clarify, it's very much, do I need to take action? It's two decisions. It's one decision. Is it actionable or is it non-actionable? Is the idea that I got when I was driving down the road and I captured it on my phone at the stoplight, is it actionable? If it's actionable, typically it's going to fall under these categories. It's a to-do, something you have to do later. You delegate it, you give it to someone else if you're in that position. Or maybe you defer it, you postpone it for a short amount of time. Or it could be a non-actionable thing, and this will be a reference. We'll talk about this in a minute. Reference, someday maybe, this is a category of like down the road. This might be 6 months from now. It's nothing that you're probably going to worry about now, maybe this semester, maybe next semester, right? And it could also go into trash. I've had many ideas that I've captured, and then I looked at it the next day or the next week, said, nah, next, I'm going to just delete it, right? And that's fine. But this is the step. This is the clarify step. Once we have clarified, then we deal with organizing. And this is a pretty wide subject here, but the organizing aspect is now where you're starting to put into different projects, maybe an action plan, some goals and some vision. Let's look at an example here. So this is my Evernote, and I've clarified I need to determine is it actionable or non-actionable. Now, I'll draw your attention over here. This is hard to read. This is just what it looks like. This is the home screen of Evernote. But more importantly here, along this side, okay, is this. And you basically can establish what they call notebooks. Okay, so notebooks are basically spaces where you put notes. Okay, so one note will go into one of these spaces. A note cannot go in any more than one notebook. So here I have to clarify, is it actionable? If it's actionable, it's going to be probably somewhere under here in this category. If it's non-actionable, maybe it goes down into my literature notes. And we'll talk about literature notes here in a minute. But I want to draw your attention here to this process in Evernote. What it looks like is to clarify, it quickly goes into one of these notebooks. Now, this is just an example. If you're using this app or any other app, of course, you can call these whatever you want. You can design all of this. But I want to show you here is capture inbox. I get an idea, boom, it goes into my inbox. This is everything, good or bad. Then when it leaves my inbox, it goes into someplace in my actions. Okay, this is my flow. This is my process of getting any kind of information I have, whether it's for class, whether it's for a research project, whether it's for whatever the purpose. I try to follow this format. Okay, next slide. Now, to organize, Evernote has what's called tags. So it's hard to see, it's impossible. But further down, we have tags. So tags are different than notebooks. So notebooks are more status. Are we doing it now? Are we doing it tomorrow, next week? Tags are more categorical. And tags, you can see here, they're nested. within, this one's within this author. I have my authors here, and it's under contents. Let me find one here for publishing. All right, if I'm going to publish an article on Medium, it's under publishing, newsletter, podcast. These are things that I do. You would put information that's appropriate for you. What are your outputs? What are you creating? These are projects. My classes are projects. Right? My communicative abilities 2 is a class that I'm teaching. That's a project that I have here. So any information I have for this class, it gets tagged, and I even include which unit. If we're in Unit 1, Unit 2, I put that note in its appropriate place so I can find it. Right? Imagine if you don't use tags trying to find notes. It's hard. So here we have tags. And you can identify, you can use as many tags as you want. That's the beauty of tags. You can have 4, 5, 6 tags, and you can nest them. So there's a lot of ways here that you can organize your notes, right, when you're completing this process. Getting things done. Another step now. Reflect. And this is, there's not much to say here other than reflect is going back and reviewing your notes, right? One thing is to put it in an organization, in a notebook, but you have to go back and frequently check to see, maybe on a daily basis, a weekly basis, maybe a monthly basis, maybe per semester, but you have to review your information. It's like you have to live in those notes. You have to keep going back to those notes. It's not like leaving in a note and then it just magically serves a purpose. We have to get and use those notes, review them, change them, modify them, review. Maybe we have to reorganize, but it requires reflection, right? And if you can get in a schedule, like for what I do is every day for my classes especially, I'm reviewing because I want everything in my notes that I'm going to be working with my students on for that day. Now, some things change. Maybe we have to review a unit, we have to review something, then I update, and I have to also check my notes. I update my notes as well. Okay, so it seems like getting started, it seems like a lot of work, but once you get in the flow, you get in the rhythm of finding a system that works for you, it starts to help you be more efficient, more effective, and more engaging, right, with the people that you interact with. So here in my example, when I reflect, again, is it done on a daily basis, a weekly basis, right, a monthly basis, depending on what it is. I have notebooks here. I have my tags here. Again, notebooks, this is the status. And it only goes in one place. It flows down. It starts up here, and it works its way down depending on its status until it gets down here. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then the tags. I'm reflecting. This is what I'm reflecting. I have to go in, and maybe it's not a focus anymore. Right? I'm finished with it, and I will move it down here or move it in some other category. Okay? But again, it moves from inbox, from capture, down through to the actions. Okay, next slide. Engage. Now this is, I think, probably the most important aspect of the system. We talked earlier about your why. We talked about why do you do what you do as a teacher? What's your purpose? What's your why? With getting things done, with this system, how will you decide what to do and what not to do and feel good about it? So imagine every action, every note, everything that you capture into your system needs to work its way up to your purpose. So here we have current actions, we have projects, these are all the details. This is how we get things done. Remember how the brain works. First, the why, then the what, then the how. So the how is down here, but the why is way up here. So when you're capturing information, it's all linked. It should be linked to some overarching goal. Maybe your goal is to share more with other people, other colleagues. Maybe you want to share online. You want to have an online presence, right? Because you want to help others. Whatever your purpose is, whatever you're doing should lead to that purpose. Otherwise, why do it? That's really the point. And this engage really is, this step is important for you to determine what should you be doing, and more importantly, what should you not be doing? What's wasting your time? Okay, so this is very important, this alignment here that we have. Working our way down, trying to think of this first, thinking of our why, thinking of our vision and our goals, and how we engage in that process. So what are your horizons? We've talked, some of you like to share. You want to share with your students. You want to impart information onto your students. What are your horizons? I want to give you a few minutes. We've got some time here. Think of, in a short statement on your, I think everyone has a pad here that maybe you can write on if you wish. Your purpose, maybe a vision and a goal, and you can fill out as much of this as you feel comfortable with, but try to align these. Try to see what goals would I need to achieve this outcome or vision. What vision or outcome would I need to align with this purpose? And you can start from top down, or you can start from bottom up. Okay, I'll give you just a few minutes here to kind of reflect on this. Because again, if we don't have a purpose, a why, then the rest of our note-taking process feels like just extra work. It feels like this is not really worth it, right, to do it. Feel free to talk with your neighbor. Ask each other what your purpose is, what's your why. Okay, I think we'll move on. Ideally, we'd have more time to really just talk about these aspects. Again, what I'm presenting here is not a comprehensive discussion on this topic. It's something that takes a lot of thinking and getting into really figuring it out. But I hope today we're just kind of planting the seed, so to speak, to really see what can I get from this to, again, get my optimal experience. Because, again, that's what we want. We want those optimal experiences. So, next slide. So just as an example, okay, and you can kind of compare maybe what you have. Again, it could be completely different. But for me, my why is I am striving to provide education that's more equitable, more available to anyone publicly, beyond my students, of course, but I'm talking about in general, to the public. So this is a purpose. This is just something I strive to do. This is what I like to do. This is my purpose. Now, my vision is now more specific. So maybe I want to create open courseware. So maybe I have some aspect of my classes that I teach, which I do, open online. Available online. Maybe not every aspect of my class, but I have some portion of the classes that I teach available online. Okay? This is my vision or my outcome. This is aligned with equitable education because you need this to achieve this. Goals. All right, so now the goals are a little bit more specific. So in my example, I'm going to try to offer, 4 online classes. Okay, and these numbers are kind of arbitrary, but you could be whatever. Maybe it's 1 class. Maybe it's two classes. Of course, it may depend on the class. I understand that. Depends on the students, the school, your comfort level, a lot of factors. And again, this is just an example. You can try to see, though, you can see how these are aligned. I hope they align. This aligns with open courseware with equitable education. Areas. Now, these are areas of focus. So I need to know something about technology, something about course content, usually asynchronous. So how can I make content available online? All right, that's going to be part of an area that I'm going to be looking at. Videos. How am I going to flip my classroom so I can make videos available to students either before, during, or after my classes? Okay, so a lot of decisions. Remember those 1,500 per day decisions that we make as teachers, this is going to fall into, we're going to maybe edge out some of those other decisions and try to insert maybe some of these to achieve our purpose. And current projects. So now I've got my writing workshop classes. These are my classes for me. This is what I would look at as a project. So writing workshop, that's one class. Communicative abilities in English 2, second semester, that's another class I'm teaching. This would be also another project. Right? So I would list the projects there. Current actions. All right, I need to do the scope and sequence at the beginning of the class or whatever. These are now the lesson planning, the more specifics. So notice here, whatever I'm doing here, the notes that fall into these categories, they are going to align to these. They're going to build up to this. So I always see the long-term goal. It's like, why am I working on this one particular note? Oh, yeah, because I want to make education more equitable. It's going to drive me to fall into the flow because it's going to be related to my purpose. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to combine these ideas: capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. The status flow we talked about, with this now one other idea that we want to look at, the residential flow, the Zettelkasten. Now this guy here, Nicholas Luhmann, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was pretty remarkable. He published 50 books, over 550 articles, had over 150 manuscripts, one manuscript over 1,000 pages. He was very prolific. He published a lot. And he had a system. Guess what the name of the system was? You guessed it, Zettelkasten. Now this is a German word from, a German word that means slip box. Basically what he did is he created a system where he had index cards. How many? Over 90,000, imagine. 90,000 index cards. Now each card, he kept notes. Now he died in 1998, so this was before most technologies that are common these days, right? So he went old school. Index cards, pencil and paper, but this allowed him to produce huge amounts of information. Now I'm not saying that this system that I'm sharing with you today is, maybe our goals are not to be publishers, okay? But the point I want to make here is with this system, how much you can produce, how much information that he used. And the system is unique because let's say when he wanted to write an article, typically when you write an article, you've got maybe a thesis that you have and you say, okay, I need to go research that. I need to go look up some articles. I need to find information to support my thesis and write the article. That's usually how it works. But he did it differently. He had this system. So he's working with his notes. He's checking his notes constantly. He's linking his notes to other ideas. He has what's called atomic notes. Each card was an idea. So he would write it in his own words, no direct quotes. So the brain is processing that information. He's writing it out in his own words. And he has all of these notes, 90,000 plus notes, that link to each other. So it's not just note here, note here, note here, note here. They link to each other. He had a system, a coding system. Now, I'm not going to get into the coding system. Today with technology, it's a simple link. Right? Think of Wiki. Wiki is full of internal links. Right? You're reading a Wiki article, and it has a link of a text that takes you to another Wiki page. You read something there, it takes you to another Wiki page. That's the idea of linking these notes, right? So that you see relationships. And so his system he came up with this system so that he was so familiar with the information in his notes that writing an article was a piece of cake. Because he already had the information. He'd been in the notes, learning and making those connections. He didn't have to go and search articles. He already did the search. He already was building his notes at the beginning, right? And at the beginning, yeah, you're starting from zero, right? But you have to start somewhere. And as you're accumulating these notes, Like imagine as teachers, if you had all these notes and connections of, let's say, tasks. You had one note for a task that you do. You would have all these connected notes where that you could easily transfer that same activity to another class, maybe modify it a little bit. Think of how efficient you can be by just having all that information in those exercises and those tasks and maybe lectures if you're giving content and lecturing information and making those tweets, improving everything, constantly working in those notes. That's how he functioned. His notes were the starting point. It wasn't the article. It wasn't the book. He already had the information in the notes. And so here we have fleeting notes, which is we've talked about, which is just the inbox. It's the capture, and then we move on. We talked about atomic notes. The literature notes are articles. These are notes that relate to one article. So this is typically what we think about when we just are trying to understand, if you're familiar with the Cornell method, but simply just looking at an article or a book chapter and just taking notes. You're putting it in your own words, but you're taking out information from that source so that you understand it. Okay, so this idea here, next slide please. This slide, permanent notes, everything goes in the permanent notes. This is the cabinet. This is where every note that you're finished with resides. And so you can have atomic notes, individual notes with individual ideas. You can have what's called a map of content. It's basically a table of contents where you have links to other notes. Okay, and typically you have a home page, right, where you have one central space for all of your notes. Now with Evernote, it's super easy to do all of this, right, just with the use of technology. But it doesn't mean that you have to use technology if that's not what you want. But the flow is this. Inbox, capture ideas, goes in the inbox. After the inbox, it has to go somewhere because we have to do something with it, right? Otherwise, it goes in the trash, which is an option. The actions go somewhere in here. Is it a focus? Is it someday maybe? Is it next week? Whatever system works for you, but it gets put somewhere in this flow. If it's a literature note, it just stays in the literature notes. Literature notes have its own home. So all the literature notes stay in one place. And then this is my main notebook. Everything goes in the cabinet once it's done up here. It all goes in the cabinet. If I need to revisit a note, which happens, guess what? I go back and put it back in my actions, right? But this is the main space here where all these notes begin to connect. And they should connect. It's not just creating a note and living by itself someplace. There really should be a link to other notes and other ideas. So this is kind of the flow here that I'm proposing, to find that system, that process that works for you. Okay, next. So in summation, we don't want to be anxious. We certainly don't want to be bored. We want to be right in the middle. We want to find our flow. We have challenges that we can control, that we have control over. We have challenges that we don't. We can't stress over the challenges that we don't have any control over. But maybe we can do something about the challenges that we can control. The skills, don't think of it just as skills. I would suggest also thinking of it as knowledge, as your disposition, your attitude, understanding your process for taking notes and gathering this information and really being as effective and efficient as possible so that you stay as often as possible right here in flow. Seek the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to recognize and cultivate flow in your professional life according to your purpose and your vision. This concludes my presentation, and it looks like we have about 10 minutes here. I'm not sure if there are any questions or comments about the topic. Next slide. Sorry, can you do the next slide? Yes.
How do you avoid feeling overwhelmed by everything? Just when I ask that question, but what's your purpose? I have a million things that I consider to my purpose. How can I manage that level of anxiety that I have constantly, at least in my professional life, that I'm always trying to do everything I can for the students, for example, for my job, for the classes, for planning. I certainly don't have a method to categorize everything. I love it. I wish you could have, or you would have had time to talk more about it. How do you avoid feeling anxious and overwhelmed?
I think that when you are thinking about the horizons, remember the horizons. So you have a purpose, and then everything builds down from there. So I guess my first question would be for everyone is to think, if you feel overwhelmed by your day-to-day job or your day-to-day activities, is to work your way up the horizons. To say, okay, first of all, let me focus on the why now. Do I have more than one why? Maybe. But you have an honest conversation with yourself about, okay, what is my purpose, and am I just at that level, am I just trying to do too much immediately right now? And start there. And then work your way down, because the question would be, is the problem that you have too many whys, or the problem is you have too many goals? Maybe you have one why, but goals are, right? So that's what I would suggest that you look at first, is to understand those horizons first, and try not to do too much. See what's realistic, but start with a why. Start with one, I would, and then build your way down and say, okay, what does this cover? What does it not cover? And do I still feel overwhelmed? And if I'm still feeling overwhelmed, take a look. Is it because of the vision? Is it because of the goals? Is it because of the projects? Maybe you just have too many projects going on, and you just have to say, look, I need to postpone it. Remember, it's built in the system here. Is we don't do everything today, right now. It's, okay, the actions. Remember the actions. What are you going to focus on now? Maybe it's a someday maybe, like next semester, 2 months, whatever. So you're putting the actions in the appropriate places based on your day-to-day. The last thing I would say is that the routines. You are what you do every day. You are what you do every day. So the routines, build those routines in that include something like this. This is my proposal. This is my persuasive piece, is to persuade you to build in your daily routine this some kind of flow technique, this note-taking technique, something that works for you, that you can easily gather information, do something with, and produce something, and be better for it, and someone else can be better for it. And try to find that flow. The input, the organization, and the output, the engagement, the relationships, right? It all fits together. But it's all about your purpose. So I think that's where I would start, is to find those horizons, understand your own horizons, and then see, okay, where am I trying to do too much? Projects, goals, vision, purpose. And then just see. And experiment and try different things, and just say, look, I can't, you're not able to do everything in the same day. You're going to have to figure out a system to say, okay, I've got short-term goals, I've got medium goals, and I've got long-term goals, and try to place your life in that sense so that you're a happier person for it. Otherwise, you're creating stress for yourself. And the last thing I'm proposing here is to add more work. It's actually trying to work smarter, not harder. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 5 more minutes. I think we'll stop there. If anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Of course, I'll be here. Come up, say hi if you want to talk about it. If you're interested in the presentation, you can access it using this link. All right, thank you guys for attending. Thank you, appreciate it.
You've been listening to Pedagogical Dialogues, a podcast making teaching and learning more transparent. If you have any thoughts or experiences on today's topic, feel free to reach out to me on my Twitter handle at BNLEEZ, or any of my other socials accessible at benjaminlstewart.net.